Welcome to the Urban Wine Club podcast. Pour a glass, sit back, and enjoy the show.
Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to another Sip Clip. I'm your host, Foti, and with me, as always, Ari Kalos.
Hello. What's going on?
We made it to 2021.
You know, it's funny. We had a complete and utter, excuse the language, shit show of a 2020. We're going into about a week and a half of 2021, and I need more wine, a lot more wine
Than ever. Tell me about it.
It feels like that shit show hasn't fully ended yet.
Yes. And usually right about this time, a lot of us over the years have been recovering in these first couple weeks of 2021 from all the celebrating, the partying, the drinking. And
so the difference now is a lot less celebrating, a lot less partying, but the drinking was equal, if not more.
If not more, yes. And, this happens to be what they consider dry January.
Oh, yeah. I've been reading about that.
People go into this phase of they're giving up drinking because they drank so much during the holidays that they're so beat up from the excessive drinking that their bodies are just giving up.
But does that have anything to do with the pandemic? Because people were drinking a lot more during the pandemic as well.
Good question. I don't know if that's the case because I feel that people drink regardless or have been drinking because you're attending parties all the time, events all the time. I mean, yes, it seems like we're drinking more because we're subject to being at home all the time.
Oh, I mean, I definitely have drank more in the last 9 months than I normally would. Well, now that I'm, older, I mean, if I was in my 20s, it would be normal. But now that I'm older, I definitely drank more in the last 9 months than I have in the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. So the fact that you're doing this, I'm not going to use the word excessive because then you're alcoholic, but the increased rate of drinking. So how about this? How do you feel overall after the next day as drinking more?
I'm gonna give you a quick summary of my life. So in general, I feel pretty crappy after I've had if I have one glass, 2 glasses, generally that doesn't affect me much. Okay. If I have more than that, I generally feel pretty crappy the next day. I don't even get a good night's sleep. And then to add to that, there's certain wines that I've been drinking where I could drink a whole bottle and I'm fine and dandy. And then there's other wines that I've been drinking and I'll have up to 2 glasses and I'll just feel immediately just horrid. And so I'm really confused why this keeps happening. I would love to learn why some things affect me, others don't.
Yeah.
But in general, when I drink more than a couple of glasses, I'll generally not feel so good the next day, and I generally don't sleep well. So that's a big problem for me.
Well, that's the common scenario with 90% of people that have come to me and have discussed this matter. So there's so many factors involved. It's almost too complex to really break it down in this segment. But overall, what's happening is the number one factor of this awful feeling and crappy feeling is dehydration.
Yeah.
So we're constantly finding ourselves being excessively dehydrated because, unfortunately, the combination of alcohol and sugar promote dehydration in our system, which leads to awful headaches, just fatigueness, no matter how much sleep you get, and you're just sluggish, you're foggy in the brain. But that's one of the main factors in drinking and the feeling of the morning after, I guess. But there's more than just dehydration. So you mentioned people have a hard time. You have a hard time sleeping. So do most folks. You become restless. You kind of feel like your heart rate is high. If you've ever woke up in the middle of the night, like having a panic attack, sweating is also another common factor in the effects of drinking excessively or for the whole night. So I got to say that alcohol does affect everybody in different ways, but overall, that dehydration factor is going to do a number on you. So how do you get around that?
Well, one thing that I've done that kind of helps is if I'm so I tend to take I don't take a full wine glass. I take smaller. They're almost like large shot glasses, and I use those to pour my wine. So I don't have as much in front of me. So every time I want more, I have to like get up, pour it, come back. So it tends to make me drink a little slower, but it also gives me the opportunity to drink a glass of water in between, which if I do it in between that little kind of shot glass thing, it almost like works like perfectly.
If everybody could do that, it would solve most of the problems that people face the next day.
Yeah, but doesn't that sound like I have a problem where I go through so much calculation to try to figure out why I'm getting a
Well, no,
hangover?
that's the problem right there, because there's an effort involved. How often do most of us actually think about that when we're out? So
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's the reality. So being able to drink in between your beverages, your alcohol beverages, is the key. But unfortunately, we're not really geared that way to do that when we're having a good time, or we're like deep in conversation, or maybe
Yeah.
we just not have access to water when we're drinking, I guess.
Well, the lucky thing for me is, again, I'm talking about the last 9 months specifically when I'm home. So I'm right next to full access to water. I'm not really in the middle of a social setting or a conversation or whatever. I'm just
Yeah,
drinking.
drinking. Yeah, so that would be our tip is for our folks that are listening, that if you can make it a point for every glass of your alcoholic beverage, wine, cocktail, beer, what have you, follow it with a glass of water. That's number one. If you can't do that, then there's some other factors like making decisions. Every type of alcoholic beverage has certain levels of sugar. So sugar is another component that needs to be addressed when coming to what promotes awful hangovers and what promotes the awful feeling. Is obviously wine. Well, beer has less alcohol content in the lineup. Wine would be next, and then spirits would be after, right? So when we're talking about wine, obviously as the wine club platform here. So wines tend to be anywhere between 11% to 15% in alcohol. Anything above 13.5%, that's where you start to have higher levels of sugar in your wine, and that's where you're more prone to dehydration quickly. So trying to maybe choose wines that are under 13.5% in alcohol, if you're trying to make a cautious decision of what should I be drinking that I can be a little more careful with. If you want to take the effort and time, and like you said, it's a thought process, try to look at the labels of your wine and see where they're gauged at for alcohol content. And know that if it's above 13.5, yeah, you know what? If you have a glass, fine. But if you're in for the night to drink, you might want to think twice.
Good point.
If you have options.
No, definitely. I mean, I always look at the alcohol content.
So again, the drier the wine, the lower alcohol content. And the other thing that I should mention too is that certain red grapes have levels of histamines, and there are a percentage of us that have allergies or are allergic to histamines, and that will trigger different symptoms and feelings as well.
So how is that something we could tell beforehand, or you can't really? That's not something you could really know unless you drink a wine and it affects you.
You never know until it triggers it. And some folks, it doesn't. You could be drinking red wine forever, and then you are years later into drinking red wine. One day you wake up, you have a glass of red wine, and then you break out and you into hives, or you get like these rashes, or you get a scratchy throat, or you get congestion from drinking red wine, and you have no idea what's going on. And a lot of it has to be contributed to the histamines that exist in certain grapes, and you won't know that it affects you until it really happens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, as much as we enjoy our wines and our cocktails and our alcoholic beverages, as we get older or as we go through life, it's amazing how certain things change for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, so back to what we wanted to kind of bring to light is that what's really that sucks is the feeling the next day, and how many times do we say to ourselves, I'll never do that again? But then we're glutton for punishment, and think little time goes by and then we're back at it again. But if we can just keep those rule of thumbs, hydrate. Obviously, the other thing too is how much you drink in a certain amount of time. If we've talked plenty of times that during the pandemic, we've been able to polish off a bottle, no problem by ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how long does it take you to polish that bottle? So they say, like, statistically, if you consume a glass every hour, you're giving your body enough time to metabolize that glass of wine. So if you milk that whole bottle for 4 hours, you should be okay.
Yeah, it doesn't happen really.
But if you really suck that bottle down within an hour or two, then that's where, again, it's going to not be in your favor.
Another thing I do is I keep track of the wines that make me feel really sick. And then I also keep track of the wines that, like, I drink and I feel fine. Because if I have the choice, I try to stick to wines that I know don't really affect me that badly. And there's certain wines that really do. They really do make me.
Let me ask you a question. Now that you say that you're actually documenting this, do you see a pattern?
I don't think I have enough to see a pattern yet.
Okay.
Because to really notice a pattern, I think I have to get into, like, some serious documentation of, like, I mean, what do you think a number would be to find a pattern? Like 10 wines, 20 wines, 50 wines, 100 wines?
No, I don't. Yeah, that the pattern would be stylistically. Are you finding there's a pattern, a type of wines, not so much the different types of, the quantity of how many different wines, but if you're noticing that every time I drink, just to give you an example, every time I drink Cabernet, every time I drink a red blend, every time I drink Chardonnay, that's where I kind of like would be the basis of a pattern. Or again, for me, it's always about looking at the pattern of how much the alcohol content is of every bottle that you're picking up. So just like you pick up a box or a package of food that you're going to eat, I'm sure you're looking at the table of the contents on the back of the package.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. So as much as I could consciously do this, which I'm going to do it because I really want to learn more, I'm going to see the type of wine, the style of wine, and the alcohol content of the wine. And I'm going to see there if there's a pattern evolving. And
then try to drill this into your head. If you're looking at the number, the alcohol content, strive for that number to be under 13.5%.
Okay.
Because I want you to kind of, work on that so that over time, you're starting to realize that, oh, you know what? I'm drinking wines that are under 13.5%, and do I feel better when I'm doing this? Yeah, all right. I will do that. Excellent. The goal here is to make us feel better in 2021. Hopefully that works. Hopefully the hydration of drinking plenty of water in between glasses of your beverage works. If that you got to be up early, but unfortunately you have a long night and we're drinking the whole night, be prepared. Be prepared for what's going to happen in the morning. The other thing things to avoid when you're having awful hangovers is they say, avoid eating greasy food. Having more caffeine can actually intensify the hangover because caffeine will dehydrate you as well. Just, unfortunately, it's time. The only way to get around the hangover and the way you feel is just got to give it time. They say for every ounce of alcohol that you've had, it takes about an hour to metabolize it. Okay. And keep track of it. If you know something bothered you, keep track of it. Yeah. And say, don't drink that one again. And whenever you drink something that doesn't affect you so much, try to stick to that. And here's something that's coming out in 2021, which I'm not sure how I feel about it, but if you want to have a glass of wine minus the alcohol factor to give you a hangover, there's an introduction of a new lineup of wines coming to the market that are non-alcoholic wines that taste exactly like there's alcohol in it. I'm going to be honest with you. I just don't understand that, but that's just me. I've been seeing a lot of advertisements for non-alcoholic wines and cocktails and spirits that taste exactly. And I'm like, that's just not my thing at all. But just an FYI that just don't be so alarmed that you're going to see an abundance of promotions for these type of products for 2021. That's funny. All right. That's cool. That's my spiel for our first clip of 2021, which is relevant to us experiencing awful hangovers in the first 2 weeks of the year.
Exactly.
Things
Well,
will
yeah,
start-
that's some good information because I think it's important. I think it's important to moderate your drinking, but if you're going into a little bit of an excess, there's things you could do to make yourself feel a little better.
Excellent.
All
So
right.
hopefully the next time we talk, you're going to feel a lot better.
I will.
Excellent.
I got to get more wine though.
Yeah, I think you need to take a trip to the facilities.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Excellent.
All right, Foti, thank you so much. And thanks for everybody listening, watching. And we will see you next time. Happy New Year again. We'll see you out there.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.